and welcome to the last week of an introduction to paleontology with the Safe Cultural Heritage Group. I can't believe this is the last week, it seems to have just absolutely flown by. This week we are learning about human evolution. So in today's lecture you will learn what it was, so what our evolution was, key dates, paleogeography and paleoclimate, evolutionary tree of humans, that's the one that we will kind of be focusing on more today, and within that we look at key fossils and key localities and major evolutionary events such as bipedalism, tool use, dispersals, as well as increased brain size. So let's get to it. What is a human? You could probably all answer this question, but a human is anything or anyone that belongs to the genus Homo. Homo sapiens, which is us, are the only extant species of the genus. And the evolutionary history of the genus Homo is around 5 to 7 million years old, which is really, really recent in terms of geological time. And Homo sapiens only emerged around 300,000 years ago, which is absolutely crazy to think that our evolutionary history has been so rapid almost. And there have been many debates ever since, the 1800s as to what makes Homo sapiens different to other apes. And so what we do know is that the genus first evolved in Africa, and much of human evolution occurred on that continent. So what are the distinguishing features between us and apes, for example? We are bipedal, we have large and complex brains, which has led to bigger skulls, which enables the development of advanced tools, culture, language, and all over, just kind of us taking over the world and being the most dominant species. We have a lessened degree of sexual dimorphism, so sexual dimorphism is the differences between males and females. So, for example, in apes, the males are usually larger than the females, which is kind of similar to today, but we do have that similar to us, that we do have a tiny bit of sexual dimorphism, but overall not as much as other organisms. We also are able to do this, where we can touch our thumb and pinky finger together on the same hand, and that is known as ulnar opposition. I don't know what makes that a distinguishing feature, but it's quite a cool feature that we can do. We also have longer childhoods and the concept of a childhood. So, for example, organisms have apes have a juvenile stage, but their juvenile stage to adulthood is a lot quicker than it is for us. We also have really reduced canines compared to other apes. So our canine teeth are these ones. And yeah, they're much smaller than great apes, such as gorillas or chimpanzees. So let's start with the apes. Apes include gibbons, chimpanzees, gorillas, bonobos, orangutans, and humans. So bonobos are a type of chimpanzee, and there we go. And then, so we have hominoids, which are the great apes, which include gorillas, chimpanzees, bonobos, and orangutans, and the humans. During the Miocene, that's when the apes were at their most abundant. There's quite a lot of evidence for them in Europe as well as in Africa. So apes differ from monkeys by being tailless, and this gives them a wider degree of freedom for motion of the shoulder joint. So if you picture an ape, you picture them with long arms swinging from tree to tree. This allows for greater shoulder movement from being tailless, because if they haven't got a tail, what else are they going to use to grab onto? So, for example, if you were to look at a spider monkey compared to an ape, the spider monkey uses its tail more than the ape would if it had a tail. And then all of the apes, bar gorillas and humans, are excellent tree climbers. And they are found native to Africa and Southeast Asia. So orangutans are Southeast Asia, and gibbons are also Southeast Asia, and the other three are Africa. So hominoids diverged from Old World monkeys around 25 million years ago. Gibbons split from the great apes at 18 million years ago, and the hominid splits occurred at 14 million years ago for orangutans, 7 million years ago for gorillas, and 3 to 5 million years ago for chimpanzees and humans. So here we have quite a quick little phylogenetic tree of apes and great apes. So apes include gibbons, but the great apes do not include gibbons, which I think is a bit unfair because gibbons are really cool primates. And then hominoid are so when we use the term great apes, that includes humans, and then sometimes we use the word hominoid, which is great apes and humans in the clade. And so we move on to the hominidae. That's really hard to say because they're all very similar words. So the hominid is closer to humans than to gorillas and chimpanzees. And this kind of clade, includes orangutans, gorillas, chimpanzees and humans, but does not include gibbons. And morphological and molecular studies indicate that humans are more closely related to chimpanzees, whilst gorillas and orangutans are a lot distant. So we share, I think it's something like 95% of our DNA with chimpanzees, which is really, really interesting. And so here's another little tree to kind of make that a bit more easier to understand. So we have the hominidae, which include orangutans, gorillas, chimpanzees and humans. And then we move on to the homininae, and that is the subfamily of Hominidae, and there are two tribes with all of their extant and extinct species. So you have the hominini, oh my goodness, that's a lot of N's, hominini, which include Homo, which is all of us, as well as the genus Pan, which include chimpanzees and bonobos, and then the second tribe is the gorillas. The group also includes the extinct tribe of the Dryopithecines, which includes this species of Dryopithecus on the right. And so, for example, we move down from the Hominidae to the Homininae, and that includes gorillas, chimpanzees, and humans, and excludes orangutans. And so, the Hominidae timeline. So, hominid ancestors separate from the orangutan between 18 to 14 million years ago. And then the clade of humans and chimpanzees, as well as bonobos, split off from gorillas at 8 to 10 million years ago. And then the last common ancestor, the LCA, as paleontologists call them, between humans and chimpanzees, is roughly 10 to 5 million years ago. And so we know that there are basal members of our genus, and these are late Miocene fossils of Necalopithecus and Oranopithecus, and they are the basal organisms on our tree, on our branch of the tree, and their existence suggests that Hominidae diverged from the humans no earlier than 8 million years ago. Sorry, I just had to check to see what I'd written there. So, the evolutionary line to modern humans, and for this, there are as many as 22 species on our branch of the tree. It's more, so the way that we talk about human evolution is it's more of a, shrubby bush with, multiple branches going off. So, for example, we have, the Australopithecines, we have the Pananthropus, we also have, and then we have the human, shrub. It's kind of a cool way that we describe it, but it's really confusing. So human evolution is a bit of a mess, but it's quite a well understood mess. So there are as many as 22 species within the evolutionary line. There are 4 pre-Australopiths, 9 Australopiths, and 9 Homo. And the earliest humans, so Homo, are thought to be from the Pliocene. However, new finds from the 2000s pushed us back to the Miocene, somewhere between 6 or 7 million years ago. And these new finds were Sahelanthropus and Aurorin. And both of these kind of came out within a few months of each other, and they both kind of we're the oldest, no, we're the oldest. So there was quite a lot of debate over who was actually the oldest. So let's go on to cell health. Oh, here's a really interesting picture. So as you can see, it's kind of bushy instead of a tree. You know, like if you look at a cladogram, there's a lot of different groups, whereas, for example, a different organism, you have kind of a straight line. This is kind of, here's something, here's another thing, here's another thing. So we move on to Sahelanthropus, and it was discovered in 2001 in Chad, which is in West Central Africa, and it lived sometime between 7 to 6 million years ago during the Miocene. And we know about this fossil because we found a distorted, nearly complete cranium, which is there on the right, as well as fragmentary lower jaws. And the reason why this is designated as Homo is because it shows a mixture of both primitive, well, not distinguished as Homo, but as one of our family tree, is because the skull shows a mixture of both primitive and advanced characters. For example, the brain size would have been similar to a chimpanzee's, but the canines would have been small, which is a common trait in humans, as well as a prominent brow ridge, which is this bit here. And that's only really seen in the genus Homo. And it's thought that Sahelanthropus would have been bipedal, and this is because in the skull there's this thing called a foramen magnum, which is like a little hole, and this foramen was positioned anteriorly and orthogonal, so in great apes, for example, on the skull, the foramen magnum would have been here, so the face hangs low, whereas for us it's actually at the base of the skull, like this, so that we can walk upright. And we know that quite a lot of the human genus have these foramen magnum, which suggest upright walking. And so it's thought that Sahelanthropus would have been habitually bipedal, so kind of only bipedal when it's needed. And then we go on to Aurorin. So this was the second fossil that was found in 2001, and it was found in central Kenya in eastern Africa, and it lived sometime between 6.2 and 5.8 million years ago. And we know about this fossil from teeth, jaw fragments, and a broken limb bone, which you see on the right. And overall, 20 fossils of this species has been found, which is quite a good amount of fossils. And they also show a mixture of both primate and human features. So, for example, their teeth are ape-like, whereas the limb bone suggests that they would have been able to swing through trees. The femur that they've found suggests that Aurorin could have been habitually bipedal, same as Sahelanthropus. However, the rest of the postcranium, so that's not the skull. So postcranium is everything other than the skull. The body of the postcranial body indicates that it climbed trees, only coming down to really move or, get some more food from the local area. And it has more ape-like features than human features, so there was quite a lot of debate as to whether it was in fact a human ancestor, but I've thrown it in because I think it's really cool. And then we move on to Ardipithecus, and this was discovered in 1994, and it was found in Ethiopia and Eastern Africa, so quite a lot of the fossils that have been found of humans are found in Eastern Africa. I just want to put that out there. It's like this amazing area for human evolution, and it lived around 4.4 million years ago in the early Pliocene. There are 110 fossils of Ardipithecus, including a partial female skeleton. So that's really useful to know that we have this kind of partial skeleton, so we actually know what it would have looked like. And it has adaptations for both bipediality as well as arboreality. Yeah. And that's when they can move in trees. So arboreal animals are animals that live in trees. However, it probably wouldn't have been as efficient with its bipediality as humans, and also it wouldn't have been as good as in the trees as non-human great apes, so for example the chimpanzees. So it's kind of like not good at either. And it had a small face with large canines and narrow molars. And Ardipithecus also had this forwardly placed foramen magnum, so we know they could have been bipedal. So now we move on to the Australopiths, and these include quite a few famous faces that you probably will have all heard of. So they are early hominins which flourished during the Pliocene, and Australopithecus, that is kind of the most famous Australopith, and it's a really long-ranging genus temporally, so it ranged from 4.1 to 1.4 million years ago, so the late Pliocene to the early Pleistocene, and there are numerous species that we all know of. And Homo, which includes us modern humans, Pananthropus and Kenyanthropus, evolved from Australopithecus, and it's kind of thought to be a paraphyletic group. The first fossil of an Australopith was found by Raymond Dart in 1925, and it's a small child's skull from Tongue in South Africa. I've probably mangled that. Tongue in South Africa, days ago. And Australopiths share several traits of features with both modern apes and humans, and they were really widespread throughout eastern and northern Africa and southern Africa by 3.5 million years ago. And it's thought that some species of Australopiths could walk fully upright. And we have two forms of Australopiths. So we have the gracile, which include some of the most famous ones, such as Australopithecus afarensis, and that Sediba should be a lowercase s, not a capital S. I just want to apologise for that. And then we also have the robust, which are usually classified as Pananthropus, which include Pananthropus robusti, Ethopithecus, and Boisei, which again should also have a lowercase b. I don't know why I've let that happen. So there are numerous differences between the gracile and the robust Australopiths, and this includes differences in cranial capacity, the shape of the brain case, molar size, as well as a general robustness of bones throughout the body in the robust clade, as well as dietary differences. So it's thought that robust Australopithecus, aka the Pananthropus, would have eaten tough vegetable foods, whereas the gracile would have eaten more varied diet. The robust also have large cheek teeth, which are the molars and the premolars, as well as really strongly built jaws, which you will see. And the robust forms only really occur at 2.5 to 1.4 million years ago, and it's kind of disagreed on their actual taxonomy. So we're not really sure where they place, but we know that they are within the Australopithecus. So here we have a pretty useful diagram, which I've included on the handout, of the two different Australopithecus. So this is taken from Flegel in 1999, and as you can see, the robust forms have a much larger skull and a much larger jaw, and that's probably because they had to chew tougher vegetables or grasses or whatever they ate. So we move to Australopithecus anamensis, and this is quite a well-known species. It's one of the earliest Australopithecus, and it was discovered in 1995 in Lake Turkana in Kenya, as well as being found in Middle Awash in Ethiopia. And it's the oldest known Australopithecus species, and there's nearly 100 specimens, which is crazy because that's a really good sample number, and it represents around 22 individuals. And it's thought that Australopithecus anamensis and Australopithecus afarensis, which is the most famous Australopithecus, lived side by side for at least some period of time. It's probably more likely that it was kind of towards the end of Anamensis's temporal range, so kind of the last few groups of them were dying out, and then we found that there's a new cranium found within this in 2019, which I will link some news articles to. And so with Anamensis, the upper end of the tibia shows an expanded range of bone. So The tibia is the leg bone, and it was a lot bigger. And it's thought that it kind of was a human-like orientation of the ankle bone, which is thought of to be representative of regular bipedal walking. So it's really cool that this Australopithecus was already kind of upright walking. And it's likely that they were plant eaters, relying on both fruits and tough foods, such as nuts. And then we have Australopithecus afarensis. And you might know this group from their most famous fossil, Lucy, which I will just move. Oh, I can't move my face, but here there's a little. Lucy's the most famous, and she's 40% complete, which is amazing for a fossil, especially one of a human, one of a Australopithecus. And so Australopithecus afarensis was discovered in 1974, and they've been found in Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania, and Eastern Africa. Well, primarily in Eastern Africa, because those countries are from Eastern Africa. And it's thought that they lived between 3.85 to 2.95 million years ago during the Pliocene. And we know that we have enough remains from this species to kind of composite 300 individuals, which is amazing. And we also have other specimens. So there are footprints of Australopithecus afarensis, and they are found in Laetoli, which are it's a volcanic ash layer, and we found evidence of Australopithecus footprints, as you can see here on the right-hand side. There's also the first family, which is a group of Australopithecus all found in association with each other, kind of all within one depositional layer, and it's thought that they all died together. And then we also have the Dikika child skeleton. And it's thought that, well, we've kind of been able to measure from Lucy that they were around 1 to 1.2 metres tall. And they were generally ape-like in face, and they had long arms and short legs, which is interesting. And their hind limbs and pelvic structure is adapted to bipedalism. However, their jawbone is quite robust, so it's thought that they were plant eaters as well as eating like fruits and nuts. And it's known that Australopithecus afarensis was sexually dimorphic. And so now we move on to the later Australopiths, and there are as many as 7 species. So again, I've put the S with and the B in Sediba and boar's eye with capital letters. By the way, if it's a species name, they shouldn't have capital letters. I just thought I'd put that out there. So these Australopiths show advances over the other Australopiths in cases of like the flattening of the face. They have a loss of diastema, which is the gap in teeth, and they also have small canine teeth. And then there's another species that we kind of consider to be within the Australopiths, and it's known as Kenyanthropus, and it's known, and it's 3.3 million years old, and it's from Kenya, and it's known from a crushed and distorted skull, and it's got 2 partial jaws and some teeth, and the small teeth, the teeth are small, which is good to know because it will be part of our clade, and it has adaptations for both robust and non-robust Australopiths. But however, it's kind of debated as to whether Kenyanthropus is its own species or if it is just in fact a distorted specimen of Australopithecus afarensis. So now we move on to Palaeontology. So these are the robust Australopiths, and these were found in 1938, and we know they're from the Turkana Basin of North Kenya, as well as southern Ethiopia, and these were pretty well long-lived. So they range temporally from 2.6 to 0.6 million years ago. So that is the Pliocene to the Middle Pleistocene, and it appears that Palaeontropus was one of the first hominin taxa to routinely go out into open grassland areas. So where they were living was kind of like this mosaic of savanna and forests. So it's kind of thought that these guys would have ventured out into the savanna. And with Palaeontropus, they have really broad faces, and they have really massive molars and premolars, as well as a large sagittal crest. So A large sagittal crest is that little bit on their skull there, and these are kind of like bits where you hold your muscle in. So it's like a muscle attachment site for your jaw. So for example, a hyena, they have a huge sagittal crest which holds its muscles to allow for breaking the bone. And it's thought that Pananthropus coexisted with some early human species, including Australopithecus africanus, Homo habilis, and Homo erectus. So now we move on to the actual homoclade, which is really cool. And so we move on to Homo habilis, and they were first found in 1964, and they've been found in eastern and southern Africa as well. And their temporal range is around 1 million years, so it's 2.4 to 1.4 million years ago during the early Pleistocene. And it's the oldest species of the Homo genus. And Homo habilis literally means handyman. And this is because they show evidence of tool making. And the tools that we associate with Homo habilis are the older one stone tool industry. And it's thought that the older one were used for primarily butchering. And we know that they use these stone tools because in association with Homo habilis, we've also found animal fossils with cut marks on. And Homo habilis retains primitive features that kind of link it to Australopithecus. However, it shows more modern features that shows that it's a human. And Homo habilis and Homo erectus coexisted in Eastern Africa for almost 500,000 years, as both of them lived alongside Homo rudolfensis and Paranthropus borzoi. So now we move on to Homo rudolfensis, and they were discovered in 1986. The first fossil was discovered in 1986, and it's thought that they're known primarily from northern Kenya. However, it's thought that they're also sort of known from Tanzania and Malawi in Eastern Africa, and they lived around 1.9 to 1.8 million years ago during the Pleistocene. And it has a bigger mean brain size, and is kind of on the upper end of the Homo habilis' brain case size. And however, it has more primitive. It has other more primitive skull features. And the weird thing is about rudolfensis is that there are no postcranial remains that we know of. So it makes kind of like the size assessment for height difficult. And however, it's known that it is a larger in body size. However, it's kind of argued that rudolfensis is actually just a male Homo habilis specimen, which would make sense. However, there's different things. Some paleoanthropologists also think that rudolfensis belongs to Australopithecus. But it's more anatomically similar to Homo habilis. And as you can see on the bottom right, there's a skull difference between rudolfensis and habilis. So it's possible that it is its own species, but it's still a kind of debate that's going on today. And now we move on to Homo erectus. Homo erectus is probably quite a famous one, and it was first discovered in 1891. And it's known that they were like the first human species to venture outside of Africa. And we know this because we found them in northern, eastern and southern Africa, as well as Western Asia and East Asia. And it's the first of our relatives to actually have human-like body proportions. So, including the brow ridge, they have a large face with no chin, and they also have adaptations to life lived on the ground. So they've kind of lost those arboreal features. And Homo erectus is often associated with the earliest hand axes, which is really interesting. And the most famous example of Homo erectus is a complete fossil individual known as Turkana boy. So here he is. He's a nearly complete specimen. He lived at 1.5 to 1.6, well, 1.6 to 1.5 million years ago. We're not really sure on the dates. And it's estimated that he died within the range of 7 to 11 years old. And the weird thing about this is that he shows quite a few pathologies. So it showed that he had a lumbar disc herniation, which is kind of thought to be the death of that. And he also had a diseased mandible. So when it was first found, everyone kind of assumed that the diseased mandible was the reason why it died, because it couldn't eat. However, it's actually this lumbar disc which made it harder to walk for him. And now we move on to Homo naledi. And this fossil was discovered in 2015 in South Africa, and it's thought to have lived between 335,000 to 236,000 years ago. And we don't really know where Naledi is on the tree, because it is quite a recent specimen that we know of, and they also possess a mixture of traits that are Australopithecine as well as human-like. So the Australopithecine traits include primarily in the pelvis and the shoulder, whereas the human-like features are within the hands and feet as well as the brain size. So Homo naledi was found in the Rising Star Cave in South Africa, and they found a huge amount of them. They found 1,550 specimens from at least 15 individuals. And then they looked in another cave, like just down the road from this cave, and they found an additional 133 specimens, which represents at least 3 individuals. So that's a huge amount of them. And anatomically, it suggests that it walked on 2 legs, so it was bipedal, human gait. However, they were more arboreal than other Homo species, so they were better adapted for climbing and suspensory behaviour in the trees. And the thing is, so Professor Stringer, he is a human researcher in the Natural History Museum. Yeah, and he says that Homo naledi is a really young species that shouldn't really display these primitive characteristics. He states that these Australopithecus characteristics were found in fossils around 2 million years old. When compared to this, it's kind of weird that it shows both of those traits.